Welcome back to another Striper Migration Report from On the Water. I hope you all had a great weekend in pursuit of our 7 Stripe friends. A lot has happened since last week's check-in, and as we close in on Memorial Day weekend, which many people kind of consider the official start of summer, we have the May new moon to look forward to on the evening of Monday, May 26th, which is actually Memorial Day. But before we get into kind of our regional updates and the rundown, I have On the Water's publisher, Chris Megan, here with me. Chris, how's your spring run been so far?
You know, it's funny. Every year it seems to get earlier and earlier and earlier. And although I had a lot of travel with work, I was down in Alabama, and then I had a stint in New Jersey. Usually end of April, early May, you start getting the schoolies. So I was a little behind that curveball. But got a chance to get down with Frank Crescitelli and down in New York, fish Riordan Bay with him, picked up some nice stripers down there. I know that bite's been going on for some time.
Yeah.
But more locally, as of late, we got out last Wednesday. We did a big program in here, partnered with a pair here with some of our manufacturer partners and then some folks from the feds in the state that came in and talked about what goes on with the excise tax and how they kind of keep fishing going, if you will. But got a chance to get out on Wednesday, the day after. We took out a couple of folks that way, and it was one of those days that I have not seen in a long time. It was one of those days where it was like, we went down along the islands, and at one point it had to be a quarter mile in either direction. Just
Really?
Fish on the surface, ranging from sizes of, your 24 to 28, all the way into the slot side. A lot of slot fish, and then fish to 42 inches. That was the biggest fish we got, was 42 inches. But I know one of the guys that fished in the office got one the night before to 47 inches. So you got some really nice fish that are moving in right now, and to see them along the islands is really great. Buzzards Bay side of the islands as well, which is unusual. You just generally don't see them on that side.
They
usually
tend to stick in Vineyard Sound?
Yeah, well, from going back when I fished there, going back 30-something years ago, we used to wait for them to come in. We fished the Vineyard Sound side, what we call the backside, Buzzards Bay side. Always has fish in there, but they tend to move straight towards the canal, over towards the Marion Mattapoisett Wareham side. They set up there, and then they may wash through the canal or kind of hang on both sides of the east and west side of the canal. But right now, there's been a really great school of fish that have just been hanging through Buzzards Bay, and you can find them anywhere from 2 and 3 miles off the Elizabeths to tucked 5 feet off the shore.
Right, and we've talked about it in past reports. There's a total smorgasbord of bait there right now, on just throughout Buzzards Bay and the Sound. So we had Bunker, you and I just now pressed up against the beach during our lunch break.
Yeah.
What are you seeing down along the Elizabeths?
So you're seeing the sea herring, the small fry, the small herring that are in there like that. One of the fish we caught literally started coughing up all sorts of small herring. That way and kicking out. But then again, we had one fish that was gut hooked. It was that 31-inch fish. Tail was pinched. Everything was perfect that way. And it was one of these fish that was gut hooked. And we decided to keep that one. We had some company down that I knew would love that fish. So we ended up keeping it. Kevin cleaned it. And when we cleaned it, it was a full mature size bunker in there. So we're seeing everything from squid on the Vineyard Sound side of things, all the way up through the Buzzards Bay. I know Jimmy's been getting out with his kids and fishing the docks and catching squid at night. So you're seeing a little bit of everything from the small herring. I'm talking really small herring, all the way up to mature bunker these fish are feeding on. And what's funny about it is when we ran up on the bunker, there were no birds on those. The birds were all on the small.
It's all those terns and the
the
smaller
terns
birds.
were all on the small herring, and the schools were just devouring it, and they were picking up the scraps. But when you came off of those, you saw kind of those big black balls that were, indicative of the big bunker. And when we came on and we snagged those with big topwater docks or any kind of topwater plug that way, it was game on.
Yeah. Well, so sticking to the subject of the Elizabeth Islands, because I know you've been fishing them for 30 plus years, and we might be racing ahead a little bit here, but when do you typically start to see bass kind of set up along their craggy shores, and how do you target them, during the summer months when they're there?
Yeah, great question. So right now the water is still cold. So, as the water warms up, I used to go down there with Neil Larson. We used to just fish these exclusively with live eels at night. We both had young kids, and at the time what we do is we get in real tight, we cast eels. If you hit the shore and it stunned the eel a little bit and you dragged it off, all the better. We were catching them in 1 foot, 2 feet of water, and these fish were exploding. But that was when the water warmed up. And right now you've got the water's cool. I think it was like 58, 59 degrees out there. And so when we were out that way, you can start throwing the lures. And it's right around now where you'll start to find more of the resident fish settling in along the vineyards, settling in along the Elizabeth Islands and such. And one of the earliest things that I've always enjoyed doing is like, getting out there with one or two of the guys in the office. Usually Kevin and I make an exploratory, out to middle ground.
Yep.
And the rips start carrying the fish. Back in the day, it used to be sucking us at shoals. And what you do sometimes, especially when I had the young kids, troll right along that edge.
Yep.
And as soon as you picked up your first fish, you kind of made a living in that 100-yard spot.
Right. Okay. And so what are you trolling when you head out along those edges?
Yeah, great question. Back then, it was like all of the stuff that had the least amount of work for these kids that were like 4, 5, and 7. So any of the, Dyra minnows, any of the, anything that would swim, just subsurface. And what you were trying to do, because these shoals were 5 or 6 feet of water, what you were trying to do was just cover water. You'd maybe have 2 lines out or 3 lines out. Hopefully they both went off together so that each of my sons would grab one. Yeah. It was always sucked.
A good old double up.
Yeah, the double up that way.
That's awesome. That's a great way to start.
Getting back to the islands, it was right now you can do a lot of plug fish and a lot of top water stuff. As the water warms up, I used to attack it, throughout the night, and it was generally live eels. Okay. Just something about that bite I thought was awesome.
Yeah, the live eel bite is hard to beat, especially you get that rocky structure, and you pull fish right off a giant boulder. It's awesome. So last question for you. Is it fair to assume that, with the new moon, on Memorial Day, will that kind of kickstart, those stronger tides kickstart the bite and the rips of Vineyard Sound?
So that's a hope. I had a buddy that was out like 2 days ago. He was further down, one at Sunkenessa Shoals, and he comes out of Hyannis, and he started working some of the shoals towards Monomoy, and they picked up some nice bass. So I think they're just starting to move in. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of been kickstarted right now. I think you're starting to see the shoals a little late for middle ground. Yep. Usually you see those. I know when I go back, I can always tell from looking at my photos that are all dated. Yeah. I go back like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and you find this slot for middle ground somewhere around like May 5th, 6th, 7th that they show up. So a little bit late this year as far as middle ground from what I'm hearing. But I would say that it's going, but it's going to explode, I think, when that new moon comes.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the trend throughout the migration so far, is that things happened a little later, but I think now that we're starting to see consistent water temperatures warm up, things are kind of blowing wide open. We had the scup move in recently, which tends to kind of bring the end of that squid bite, and it seems like right around when that happens, the squid get pushed up into those shoals, and the stripers just gorge on them.
And that's what it is. And it's funny because every time we used to go out to middle ground, any of those shoals. And when it was really working earlier, especially like you said, a little earlier, you'd just have the squid being pushed right out of the water. You see them shooting out of the water.
Cool.
See them shooting out and such. And at that time, you could almost throw anything in there, with it. But like you said, I think when the scups start moving in that way, the squid seems to, as that water warms up, the squid push off, head back towards the backside of Nantucket in the Vineyard, and that's where most of the draggers and trollers go.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, a lot to look forward to going into Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for jumping on, Chris. And
absolutely, my pleasure.
Hope you find some time to get out.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we got a great stretch coming up. We got a long weekend, Memorial Day weekend. I have a feeling that the big school of bass that we're seeing right now down throughout Buzzards Bay and even further south, they're going to move up into the west end of the canal. And you should be a pretty good buy for the canal, I would say, coming around the Memorial Day.
Fingers crossed. There's certainly plenty of bait around.
Right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
On the Water Striper Migration Reports are brought to you by Grundens. The Grundens brand was born almost 100 years ago in the small fishing village of Grundsen, Sweden, when Carl A. Grunden began making waterproof oilskins to protect fishermen from the harsh conditions of the North Sea. Today, Grundens continues to bring that same level of quality and care to their extensive line of technical apparel for commercial and recreational fishermen. I've been fishing in Grundens Bedrock wading boots and Vector zip stocking foot waders, as well as the Portal Gore-Tex wading jacket. I actually had it on in the rain last night. Water beads up, rolls right off the jacket. It's great. It's kept me safe, it's kept me dry, kept me comfortable, no matter the conditions. I'm really looking forward to breaking them in as the striper season gets underway. The Gore-Tex Portal wading jacket is packed with waterproof features like neoprene sleeve cuffs, a drop hood with a high collar that shields me from harsh winds and pelting rain, and it is specifically designed to perform in cold weather and deep wading situations, so I can keep casting the stripers through the elements from early spring through late fall. There's truly no better fit for a Northeast surf caster. Check out all their wading gear and more at grundens.com. Grundens, we are fishing. All right, great stuff from Chris Megan there. We appreciate the insight on the Vineyard Sound, Elizabeth Islands, and Buzzards Bay striper fishing going into the new moon. So let's bounce down the coast real quick and discuss the Chesapeake Bay and Maryland striper fishing. After being closed for a month and a half, the Chesapeake Bay striped bass fishery reopened on Friday, May 16th. Now, it's worth noting that anglers in the bay adhere to a different slot size than the coastal marine waters. Anglers are allowed 1 fish per day between 19 and 24 inches, and there are plenty of bass in that size class that reside in the Chesapeake year-round, while their larger relatives migrate up the coast. We've seen most migratory overslot stripers exit the bay over the past several weeks, but according to the Maryland DNR, surf fishermen are still catching them on the beaches of Assateague Island and Ocean City using chunked bunker and mullet. There have been a lot of bluefish around still. That's been the common theme across the coast this spring. So if you're fishing a chunked mullet, try some wire leader there. That might help you secure a couple extra bass. Meanwhile, in Maryland's coastal bays, which adhere to the standard marine regulations of 28 to 31 inch slot, they're holding underslot fish from the channels to the marshes. Now, if you're out front fishing the surf, looking for a trophy, there are still some bass to be caught, but the greatest concentration of migratory fish in that 40 to 50 pound range is currently sitting off of New Jersey. From the beaches of South Jersey, surf fishermen are catching stripers to 40 inches plus with fresh surf clams doing the bulk of the work. Meanwhile, guides and captains like Brian Williams of Bad Fish Charters are finding bass in the mid to upper 30-inch range in the backwaters of Ocean City using a mix of topwaters, soft plastics, and flies worked along the sod banks and bridges. More bluefish have moved in there as well, but the bulk of the blues have been staging around the inlets and are more attracted to minnow plugs, topwaters, and metals. And while the surf bite has been good off the beaches and jetties, the boats are finding schools of big bass in open water within that 3-mile line as they stop off on bunker pods. Trolling bunker spoons and mojos has been a productive way to locate fish in transit, while flutter spoons and live-lined bunker have been an effective approach when the bass are set up beneath the bunker pods. In northern New Jersey, from Long Beach Island up to Sandy Hook area, we've got even more bunker moving up the beaches, and trophy bass are right there with them. Fish in the 20 to 30 pound range are being caught on clams, plugs, and more recently, bunker chunks in the wash. More to come on that ocean bunker bite in just a few minutes from one of our regional guests. The boats off Monmouth County have got it made right now, with 50-pound stripers being taken with a variety of methods. According to Mike Gleason of Tack Waterman, trollers, eels, flutter spoons, and live bunker have all produced bass well over 40 inches. Meanwhile, Raritan Bay saw another wave of slightly smaller fish in the 30 to 40-inch class pull up late last week, where there are still good numbers of bunker. If you're looking for a personal best beater, though, focus your efforts on the near-shore bunker pods out in the ocean and bring your heavy gear because there are bluefin tuna in the area as well. Over on Long Island, we're seeing a similar pattern unfold with schools of bunker and big bass moving east along the South Shore beaches from New York City to Fire Island. According to Brandon Whites of Causeway Bait and Tackle in Wantagh, there have been stripers from 40 to 50 inches chewing mojos and flutter spoons around the bunker schools. And with big baits becoming more abundant by the day on the South Shore, the beach bite has really picked up for surfcasters throwing darters, needlefish, bottle plugs, and large minnow plugs after dark. A bit further east, Bill Falco of Chasing Tails Bait and Tackle in Oakdale said there have been 20 to 30 pounders feeding heavily in the surf over the past week, and he cited one noteworthy catch from Todd Kowal of Fat Cow Fishing, who landed a 35-pound bass. That's a beautiful beach bass, so congratulations there, Todd. Those fish are racing towards Montauk, stopping off along the inlets to feed during falling tides. The guys over at Whitewater Outfitters in Hampton Bays noted that the fish have filled in nicely from the back bays to the beaches, but the ocean bite is definitely the better choice for larger fish right now. We'll hear more about that shortly from one of our regional reporters this week. On the North Shore, there is a mix of bait fish for bass to enjoy as they head east through Long Island Sound. We've got some scattered bunker pods out in open water in the Central Sound with 30-pound bass on them, and closer to shore, schools of sand eels are keeping schoolie and slot class fish well fed. More big bass are going to be filling in the Western Sound as stripers begin to exit the Hudson in the coming weeks. Captain Chris Oliver of Keeping It Real Sport Fishing up in Poughkeepsie. He was on here a couple weeks ago. Chris said it's been a long, drawn-out spawning season up there, which is great news, so anglers in the Sound have that wave of migratory fish to look forward to. Further east in the Sound, the reefs are fishing well for overslot fish up to around 25 pounds. We know there have been mackerel and bunker out there fueling those fish on their migration. Meanwhile, according to WeGo Fishing Bait and Tackle in Southold, New York, the Peconic Bay system is loaded with schoolie to overslot fish. Steve from WeGo anticipates that with the new moon approaching, we'll start to see the rips of the Eastern Sound, specifically the Plum Gut, fill in over the next week. Over on the Connecticut side of the Sound, one of the strongest herring runs in recent years continues, and while the rivers and harbors are still fishing well as a result, bunker pods and schools of mackerel are bringing concentrations of larger fish to open water structure. The Western Sound continues to see good fishing for bass in the low to mid 40-inch class, with flutter spoons, large walk-the-dog style topwaters, and soft plastic jigs all getting the job done. According to the folks at Fisherman's World in Norwalk, a lot of boats are still doing well trolling mojos, bunker spoons, and deep divers in 30 to 50 foot depths. Meanwhile, on the Connecticut beaches, schoolie to slot-sized fish are being caught on small topwaters, soft plastics, and bloodworms and sandworms. And according to Matt Stone of Blackhall Outfitters, the central and eastern sound reefs are starting to see waves of transient fish in the upper 30-inch class, which is a great sign. Bunker schools should be showing up near the river mouths over the next week or so. They'll receive some assistance from those exaggerated new moon tides. But right now, there are a whole lot of schoolies and mid-20-inch class fish mixed in with a recent wave of bluefish, according to Captain Joe DiOrio. For those fish, he's been throwing 7 to 9-inch soft plastics and top waters like the Joe Bag Skipper. Once some of those larger bass hit the eastern sound, though, it'll be time to boost the size of those offerings. Take it from the folks in Rhode Island, where stripers to 40 pounds have been caught over the past week in Narragansett Bay. There are some exceptionally large stripers in the ocean state this week, but the bulk of the bass fall within that 30 to 40-inch range, and they're feeding on river herring and now schools of adult bunker in the upper bay. Live-lined bunker, flutter spoons, topwaters like the dock and Game On X-Walk, and even chunks of mackerel and bunker have helped anglers boat bass to 40 pounds. Captain Rob Taylor of Newport Sport Fishing Charters boated his first 40-pound bass of the season last week. And with stripers in the 25-pound range rounding Long Island's east end and more pressing east through the sound, the bass bite in Rhode Island is going to get crazy as the new moon approaches. Roadie surf casters fishing from the ocean beaches or the rocks should focus on throwing larger presentations like darters, bottle plugs, metal lips, and needlefish in the coming weeks as more bass and bunker continue to filter in. Moving on up to Cape Cod and Massachusetts, we've seen an uptick in the presence of bunker over the last week, and they brought a wave of big bass with them. While there have been good numbers of stripers to around 25 pounds or so in Cape Cod Bay, where they're gorging on spearing, mackerel, sand eels, and scattered bunker pods, Buzzards Bay has been a bit of a revolving door for large migratory fish, and that's something Chris touched on as well. There are still some squid kicking around in Buzzards Bay, along with herring, and as of last week, those smaller schools of bunker have been moving up along the beaches of the Cape and the South Coast, with stripers ranging from the upper 30 to mid 40-inch range following close behind. In addition to those big baits, there are plenty of smaller bait fish around on the south side beaches of Vineyard and Nantucket Sounds, namely those young-of-year sea herring. They've been stacked up off the jetties and sand beaches for a couple weeks now. The bass feeding on those sea herring are a bit smaller, ranging from low 20 to 30-inch class, but any day now, we'll start to hear of some overslot fish setting up in the rips of Vineyard and Nantucket Sounds. As Chris Megan also mentioned, there were loads of stripers in the 30-inch class pushing through the Elizabeth Islands last week. And since the squid bite has waned a bit, we're expecting bass to collide with squid on the shoals as the new moon approaches. Up in Cape Cod Bay, stripers in the low 40-inch range have plenty of forage to choose from as well, but depending on what they're eating, the fish have been a little picky. There are large concentrations of silversides in the bay and its Cape side harbors, while mackerel, bunker, and sand eels are fueling the fishing from the Cape beaches out to open water. Pushing slightly north along the south shore of Massachusetts, it's a similar story. There are stripers in the 40 to 45-inch range on large schools of bunker just outside of Boston Harbor, while fish to around 20 pounds chase herring in the nearby rivers. According to Captain Brian Coombs of Get Tight Sport Fishing, some of those bunker pods have also begun pushing into the three bays. He's still bouncing between Buzzards Bay and Boston, but when he's fished Boston Harbor, live-line mackerel have been the ticket to some quality fish, while smaller, school-sized bass are taking topwaters in the early morning hours. The North Shore of Massachusetts continues to see the best fishing around the herring runs, with fish to around 40 inches being caught on large soft plastics and mid-sized topwater plugs. And migratory schoolies have begun to trickle into southern Maine just as we've projected in weeks past. So to all the maniacs listening, look to the days just before and after the new moon on Memorial Day for a wave of fresh arrivals. With that, let's get into some of our regional reports from our guests this week. Please welcome our first guest, Mike Pinto, owner of Giglio's Bait and Tackle in Seabright, New Jersey.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to give you a little summary of what's going on in our area this week on the bass fishing. We're located in Seabright, just a few hundred yards off the ocean. Perfect location. Try to do a little summary of what's going on. The last couple of days we got quite a few bunker coming down the beach heading north, which is typically a good sign. Normally there's always bass behind these schools of bunker. The average size fish, I would say, that I've been seeing caught on the surf would probably be 12 to 15 pound range. Sometimes smaller, sometimes you get lucky, you get a 40-inch fish, that range. I definitely see a good upswing in the next week or so with the migration of these bigger bass coming from the Chesapeake. A good sign of that is watching these guys on the boats trolling these eels. They're getting some tremendous fish, really big fish. So that's a good sign also. Let me just give you a little rundown of what I think is a few plugs to throw. One of my favorites is the Azori. Get this thing straight so you can see it. Hold on a minute. I love this Uzuri. These Uzuri hydro minnows, LCs, they work great, oceanside or river. They cast well, they swim very well. They produce a lot of fish. SP minnows, very effective, similar to the LC hydro. Runs a little bit deeper. One of our favorite plugs, probably our best seller, is the Outcast. These Outcast plugs are remarkable. They really produce a lot of fish all year round, especially in the fall. This is called the hybrid popper, very popular. I think that about sums it up. The fishing is definitely in upswing. Things are looking good. We're going to see more fish in the coming weeks. So you guys who are interested in bait fishing, I would definitely throw a bunker chunk or clams. That's what I would do. All right, I think that sums it up pretty good. You just got to get out there and put your time in, and you'll be rewarded with some nice fish. So be sure to stop by Giglio's Bait and Tackle and check out what we have. Everything for the surf fishermen. All right, take it easy.
On the Water Striper Migration Reports are also brought to you by Quantum. Stripers are back, and so is Quantum with their new Benchmark and Strive spinning reels. I had a chance to fish the surf with the Benchmark 6000 during the fall striper migration last year, and it is a true workhorse. Performs great in all kinds of surf, but especially in that heavy, rough surf that you get during the fall run and even during the early spring when all those storm systems are moving through. The 6,000 size Quantum Benchmark boasts 35 pounds of fish-stopping drag power, and like all Benchmark models, it is highly resistant to heavy water pressure and sand or salt intrusion, which makes it a great choice for fishing big surf. The Strive 3000 spinning combo, which includes the same water-resistant qualities, was a top performer from the kayak and boat when stripers and bluefish fed alongside schools of large bonito last fall. The fully sealed Strive spinning reel is complemented by a sensitive but durable graphite composite rod with a stainless steel guide train, so I can focus on fighting fish with confidence instead of worrying about chipped, scratched, or corroded guides. To learn more about how Quantum is setting the new standard in saltwater fishing, check out quantumfishing.com. Quantum, tested beyond limits. All right, you heard it from Mike. Stripers are taking bunker chunks and big swimming plugs on the beaches of North Jersey. There are some nice fish around 20 pounds being caught by surf casters, while the boat guys enjoy trophy fishing for stripers to around 50 pounds. I'd expect the new moon to send those fish packing, so if you're on Long Island, look to the bunker pods out front over the next week or so for a wave of 40 to 50 pounders coming up from the Chesapeake and Delaware. Our next guest this week is a contributing writer to On the Water magazine and a man of many hats at Whitewater Outfitters in Hampton Bays, New York. Here's On the Water columnist Jeff Lomonaco.
Hey guys, it's Jeff here at Whitewater Outfitters in Hampton Bays. Basically, over the last week on the East End here, we've had some pretty good striper fishing overall. A lot of slot size fish to pushing 20 pounds around, even some bigger than that I've seen. Fishing's been good in general for the boat guys, surf guys, fly guys, you name it. Everyone's pretty happy with the fishing. The only issue is that there's been a lot of big bluefish around, and they've been kind of getting in the way a little bit sometimes. They tend to outcompete the bass as far as eating the lures go. So you just got to pick through them or change up your tactics a little bit to try to target the bass a little bit more. And fishing has been good in general. There's a lot of slot-sized fish around with some bigger ones pushing 20 pounds. I'm expecting that to change over the next week here. I'm going to say we'll probably start to see some 20 to 40 pound class fish start to mix in. And I think we'll start to see some of that bunker school fishing out in the ocean start to come alive as well. Basically, as far as the fishing goes, a lot of guys are just using small soft plastics and stuff in the bay, 4 to 6 inch range, paddle tails and straight tails on jig heads. A lot of fly guys throwing deceivers and clousers, just small bait fish patterns basically. Fish feeding on spearing and bay anchovies and white bait, stuff like that. There's been a few cinder worm hatches in the bays too, so the fly guys have, when that's happened, have been doing really well with little cinder worm patterns. We're starting to come off the moon here, so I'm going to say that's probably going to start to taper off, though.
Thank you, Jeff, for the insight. There are mixed classes of fish moving along the South Fork of Long Island, with a majority of them being in the slot up to around 20 pounds. However, with bunker pods to the west and big bass hot on their tails, the ocean bite should heat up nicely heading to Memorial Day weekend's new moon. That's it from our regional reporters this week. Let's check in with the crew over at Canyon Runner for the big picture report. Canyon Runner is doing a 1-month free trial for their inshore mapping system. If you want to take advantage of this exciting offer, email info@canyonrunner.com for more details. The Canyon Runner virtual captain and tracking map is coming soon to inshore anglers chasing stripers and all other inshore species for as low as $99 a year. It serves as your co-captain, providing weather, water temperature, and safety information with a built-in warning system and so much more. Gain the ability to track each and every member and pro staff boat in real time on one page, one map, one website, one helm. Know where the fleet is at all times and extend your network of buddy boats in real time. Learn more at www.canyonrunner.com. Take it away, guys.
All right, Matt, here we go. Middle to the end of May. I can't believe we're already approaching Memorial Day weekend, but as the weather will show you, typical for Memorial Day weekend, we got some nasty weather coming at the end of this week. We always just look at the big picture, watch the highs and lows move across the country. And there's a low, as you can see over here. This is Thursday. I'm going to just zoom in quickly. I'm going to get rid of the boats so you can see a little bit better. Even get rid of the pro staff. What we've got, if you look at Thursday in the morning, there's a low that comes off the Delmarva. As it moves up the coast, you can see there's actual rotation. I'll put some animation in this. And we've got rotation. We've got, your quintessential nor'easter. It's going to basically mess up everything up and down the coast for Thursday. It clears out Friday, and you're going to have west winds Friday. But what you're going to, look at this storm up to the north, the Cape and everything for Friday afternoon. Into Saturday morning, it clears out. But the problem is what's going to happen with the weather. We are really struggling to get some ocean fishing going. There was some this week. We'll touch on it, but this is just another kind of kink in the armor. However, the fish move on a nor'easter. You may have fish just pile out of the rivers and out into the ocean. Something's going to change with this. But the long and short of it is, this is Manhattan again. We're just going to put the weather in the middle. Look at Friday. Look at Thursday. Look at these cold temperatures. 49 degrees for Thursday night, 51, 52, 53 for Saturday night. And who knows what's going to happen with this nor'easters. Normally, they stay a little longer than forecast. Would not be surprised if Friday and Saturday are total washouts for most places. But let's look on the brighter side. Let's look at water temperature. And look at the water temperature. We don't have to dig into this too much like we normally do, but you've got 67-degree water pushing hard up the coast. You've got the back bays, as you can tell, are still on the cooler side. This is because this water is coming from the Gulf Stream as the Labrador Current kind of diminishes a little bit this time of year. This warm water starts to push up, and it's going to creep up the coast. All the way through the coast, you can see now 57, 58, 50. It's all the way out here. It's plenty warm enough. The water is now nice and warm over in here. And as we get out east, it's even where we're starting to see some action this way. We'll talk about that in a second, but really don't have water temperatures issues much anymore. So let's not focus on them. Let's focus on where the boats have been fishing. And this is the last week's worth of fishing going back to last Tuesday. Let me just take the notes off here. You'll see that as we zoom in, there's just a lot more activity up and down the coast, all the way out to the east. A lot of activity here. We're going to see a lot of activity off of Montauk, and there's stuff going on up this way too. Let's start though. Let me pull our fish notes. We only have a handful of people who got on the map. Again, remember, they're only tracked on the map when they turn their Starlink on or they're in reach. Our new app can actually track you by your phone. So we had one of our pro staff, the Really Babe, out here. You can see where they came from. This is the northern Chesapeake. Now, we've talked a lot about the fishing that goes on in here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The structures, this isn't any secret spot. The structure's the same everywhere. But look where they set up. And they basically had over 30 fish. It was just father and son, 30 fish. Brad Burgess and his son were out there, and they did quite well. It was like a half a morning fishing with 30 fish. Basically, bait fishing, a little casting, nothing crazy. There's just a ton of fish there. Like we've said for weeks now, though, they're the smaller fish, nothing major in size. Everything's, basically under 30 inches, but just a ton of action. As we came, same thing's going on. All these similar areas, similar types of structures going to hold bass. Any of these points would hold them, depending on the tide and when you want to be there. The same thing's happening in here. All right, there's a lot more drum fishing going on. There's been more of a focus, but there's bass in here. LBI sport fishing and Mod Squad charters, they're still not out in the ocean. And this is kind of what I left with, and this is what I'm going with. They're still having to fish back in the bays. As you go up the New Jersey coast, it's all bays, rivers, and creeks. There's virtually nothing going on out in the ocean. You can see I'm leaving all the track lines from everyone fishing. There's people running back and forth. Here's LBI Sport Fishing out here. On Monday, he was looking for some bluefins. He came back inshore. He was looking for stripers, so no signs of life. Just bottom fishing now. Still bass up in the bays and the creeks. That's where it's happening. Until you finally get up here, and you'll see some concentrations. As you come up the beach off of Asbury, you'll see there was some effort put in finally off of Asbury, Elbron, Shrewsbury Rocks. Guys trolling, slow trolling eels up in this area. But it's not a lot. It's not great. It's not what it should be for the week, the middle of May. A handful of fish, still the best by far, is back up in here. This is the Raritan Reach channel. You can barely even see the channel right now because here's the channel right here. The Raritan Reach channel, as you can see, that's where the concentration's been. Andrea's Toy, one of our other pro staff out in New Jersey, does a ton of striper trips all year long. He was leaving in the morning to do a bluefin trip, thick fog. He just got right out in front of here, back up in the triangle. The fish are still up in here. Did quite well in this general area. Starting to catch fish up in here. Again, days where Fatback, one of our other pro staff, couldn't get out. I mean, there were days the winds were hard out of the west. They just came back in here in Jamaica Bay. They caught a little bit better effort. I'm not going to talk about in here down on the South Shore of Long Island. It's the same thing, but there's been a little bit more effort up in this area. And there's a lot of bass action now. It's all along the coast. It's all just like Really Babe was doing. It's tight to the beach. It's in the shallower area, but there's fish picking. And what's going on is there's like a daily migration to the east, and they're pushing more and more east. And a lot of the Rhode Island and Connecticut charter boats now are finding fish. Better action down in this area, North Shore of Long Island, but they're starting to push this way. There's really not much going on here. The boats leaving out of here are coming over here to fish. And then two of our pro staff I want to focus on, as you can see, a lot of activity this week. Surfmaster Captain Tom Federico, he's been just started fishing this week on his own boat, and he then freelances on other boats. Their first trip out did real well. They couldn't get him on jigs and tails themselves. They started trolling on Bella rigs, and it was basically automatic. O Brother has been out. That's not actually, O Brother's been out all week long. They've been doing great. Excellent mix of fish up to 35 pounds. Certain days they can get them diamond jigs. Certain days it's just trolling. The beginning and the end of both tides produce the best. It's tougher fishing on the hard tide. And we're going to see this start just slowly migrating their way out this way, and it starts going to get good. And hopefully by next week, we're going to see more and more action up here. Nothing great to speak of besides keeping it up in the creeks, but this should all turn on except for the one thing that I showed you. That nor'easter, what it's going to do up here when it gets here, really might mix things up. Hopefully this is wrong. We have 4 different forecast model maps on this. Unfortunately, they don't go out that far. If I actually pull down our comparative models, we're going to show you on these 4. If we go out to look at the nor'easter over here, here it is. But they do kind of lay down for Saturday, Sunday. Here from this point off the Cape, and hopefully, let's see down in here. That's as we pull to Saturday, Sunday. It's Thursday, Friday, kind of a washout. Look, we got our fingers crossed for Memorial Day weekend. Normally, wouldn't look that far advanced. We never look that far advanced, but it's a big weekend for everybody. And the biggest news is, as we showed on this map, everybody's now catching from Chesapeake Bay all the way up to the Rhode Island and Connecticut boats have them in range. Really solid fishing off the tip of Montauk. And it's just going to keep moving east. Hopefully we don't have a little fly in the ointment with that nor'easter. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that the forecast models are wrong. And hopefully next week we're talking about just what has a great Memorial Day weekend and a lot of fish out here to the east. I hope that's our focus. Time will tell. Everyone have a great time, great week. Hopefully this week sees the ocean stuff really explode. And Mac, back to you. Thanks a lot, bud. Bye.
On the Water's Striper Migration Reports are also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Whether you're setting up to hold position on a rip line or inching your way toward a boulder-strewn beach, Garmin's force crack and trolling motor is up to the task in any saltwater environment. With autopilot features like anchor lock, cruise control, and route following, which can all be controlled via wireless remote, this bow-mounted trolling motor is built to help you make the most of your inshore fishing trips, regardless of the conditions. The force crack and trolling motor is available in a range of shaft lengths from 48 to 90 inches for bay boats, center consoles, down east style hulls, and more. Learn more about the force crack and trolling motor and everything Garmin Marine has to offer at www.garmin.com. Garmin, engineered on the inside for life on the outside. Shout out to Canyon Runner for another great report. We always appreciate their input in breaking down water temps and the forage base, along with the size classes of stripers along the entire coast. This time last week, we mentioned that schoolies just might reach southern Maine before the end of the month, and we're hearing early reports of fresh fish pushing into feed on river herring in places like the Saco and Kennebunk rivers, among others. South of Maine, between New Jersey and Boston Harbor, full-size bunker are filling in all the right places, and as a result, 40-inch fish are widespread across the coast. Some places have stronger concentrations of the northeast staple bait fish, and with the new moon on the way, we're bound to see more of them show up as the migration picks up steam. In the next week or two, I anticipate some larger bass beginning to drop out of the Hudson, whether they head for the Long Island Sound or the ocean, and not soon after, all of New England will see striped bass fishing firing on all cylinders. That means now is a great time to sign up for On the Water Striper Cup. In this 20-week catch-and-release-based striper tournament, you can win weekly prizes from Yeti, Bubba, Penn, Costa Sunglasses, or Turtlebox Audio just for catching fish and submitting your photos and measurements online. You can learn more about the cup and sign up at stripercup.com. For more migration updates, follow On the Water Magazine and Striper Cup on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Now get out there and make the most of those new moon tides. And if you can get your hands on some live bunker, get it out there on a circle hook. 60% of the time, it works every time.
Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. That smells like pure gasoline.
They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.